Hey basketball coaches, yes, in this video I am going to show you some fantastic full court presses that you can run with your team, especially younger basketball teams. Here we're trying to keep everything super simple so that they're able to understand how to run a full court press, but also how to run your full court press. So let's get down to the clipboard, let's check out these plays, but really quickly, I do understand that some leagues do not allow a full court press. I also understand that some coaches absolutely dislike them. That's totally fine. But if you're allowed to use a press, go for it. Might as well teach the players what they can do ahead of time before they get older so that they know what they're doing when they get older. Let's get down, let's check these out. Okay, so in this first press, we're going to be a 1-3-1, and this is going to be ran a bit differently than any regular 1-3-1. I like to try and run it very simple, where I tell my 3 players, do not pass half. I want them to stay on their side of half. Next, player 5, his goal is to protect the 3-point line and everything inside. We do not want him to come outside of that 3-point line. From there, obviously, they are going to be inbounding that ball. We're going to be seeing now player 1, his main goal is to stay behind that free throw line. We do not want to then press up full court, have him pass the ball, and then attack the middle. We really don't want that. We want player 1 to really protect this area of the court. We don't want anything to go in there. So what happens is, as soon as they start dribbling the ball up the middle, we're going to have player 1 cut that off. Now usually what's going to happen is player 3 will be coming up this side, we'll have player 2 coming up this side. At this point, where we start pressuring that ball very closely, very tight, he's going to make a pass, and most likely that pass is going to go to player 3. Or if it's a younger team, they're going to go and pass over to player 2 because obviously he has more space to operate in, and kids are generally pretty smart about that. So he's going to pass over to player 2. Player 2 is going to start attacking that half-court line. He wants to try to go up the middle. We're going to assume that this team has a little bit of knowledge on how to beat a press defense. So we're going to have player 1 then cut off that dribble and continue to force player 2 over. Now, in this case, most of the time we will have older teams who will have player 4 sneak up or player 3 sneak over so that now they can at least have an attempt to cut off that pass. We are actually going to be leaving our players back, and there's a reason for that. At the younger level, obviously passes are not going to be as crisp. We're going to be able to run sometimes faster than a little 7 or 8 or 9-year-old who can run versus the pass. So what we are assuming here is not very strong players anyways, but we're going to be basically trying to force the player into this corner or that corner. If they are smart and they reverse that ball, we still want these 3 players to be able to stay past half. He's going to be now attacking the middle. What we want to see is for player 1 and for player 4 to stop that forward progression and to force the ball over towards this side. Now, of course, these players are down farther. If they're younger players, they're not going to be able to pass that far. Player 5 is going to be able to cut that off quite easily. So what's going to happen now is a pass over to player 3. And like I was mentioning before, we really don't want to have all that much complications. So at this point, player 1 could go and help player 3 trap 3 blue in that corner. Or if your team's a little bit older or they understand if they say switch, then we can have player 4 leave his spot, player 1 takes player's 4 spot, and now those 2 players can trap 3 blue in that corner. That is a major thing to be able to teach your team, is that ability to say, hey, switch, I got your spot. Because now he knows, player 4 knows he needs to now pop out and force that ball over towards the corner. Now, of course, there is the diamond 1-2-1-1, and this is the second play that I'll show you. And here, this is a more difficult press, but at the same time, we can run it really simple. So what we can have is most likely we'll have a screen here, player 1 getting that ball, player 2 popping off that screen, player 3 running in bounds. While that happens, I would not instruct player 1 to force player 1 to dribble. How I would force him to go is to cut off that reverse pass. Every single team teaches their players a press break by passing the ball inbounds, getting the inbounder inbound, and then having that pass to reverse the ball. But instead, we can have player 1 play in the middle, and now player 1 is now forced to dribble because, of course, he has no passing lane. So he's going to be forced to dribble up the right side. Player 2 is then going to be collapsing onto him. Player 1 is still going to be collapsing or blocking the passing lane. We're going to have player 3 clogging up the middle. If player 4 is an option, we really want player 5 to move out, not player 4. We want player 4 to stay in the middle because the middle is where you will get beat. By having player 3 and 4 and 1 clogging up the middle, we now have the inability to pass that ball into the middle of the key, or in the middle of the court. Even if player 3 tries to run up the middle, we can have player 1 still clogging up the middle with player 3 now collapsing on him. This is now forcing player 1 to continue to dribble towards the corner. As soon as there are no more players over here, this side of the free throw line extended, we can now have player 1 sprint over and trap player 1 along the sideline, preferably here, because obviously you can't get back over half, but I'll take a trap along the sideline any day. Now a 2-2-1 is another simple zone press that you could run. And here, of course, we're going to be most likely, this is just the average press break. What's going to happen? Player 3 would then inbounds. We don't want those two players to go past the free throw line extended. So if they want to reverse the ball because they're taught to do that, that's totally fine. They're going to then dribble up the middle. That's when we're going to close this off. He's going to be forced to dribble or pass towards the sideline. As soon as he passes, we don't want player 4 to go and try and take that. We want player 4 and 3 to stay behind that half-court line. Player 1 will be dribbling up the sideline. That is when player 2 is going to be collapsing onto him and forcing him towards the sideline. At this time, player 4 is going to be covering player 4 blue. Player 3 is going to be covering the middle. Player 1 is covering the reverse middle. Player 5 is covering the deep. We are now trying to force player 1 towards the sideline. At this point, as soon as player 1 starts getting close to that sideline, what I want to see happen is player 5 to start sneaking down towards that sideline to cover player 4. Of course, there's that long pass, but at the younger age groups, that's a very risky, and usually they're not strong enough to make a far or deep pass like that. So at this point in time, player 2 is forcing player 1 towards the sideline. Player 4 traps. We need our players to sprint back because there's no way to get back over half with a pass or a dribble. Player 1 needs to cover middle. 3 is the next one over. Player 5 is the sideline. You've now trapped him because, of course, passes over here can be picked off for 1, but also very hard to do when you're talking about very young players. Now, this next one is an interesting one because this is one that I've seen a team run back when I was an assistant coach. When I was in high school, I was an assistant coach for the grade 7-8 team, and I seen a team run this, and it really just caught my attention, and I'll never forget it. Basically, it's a 2-1-1-1. It's very interesting because it really does clog up the middle, especially when you teach your teams or you're going up against a team where you teach your team, hey, if they're pressing, dribble the ball up the middle as much as possible, attack the gaps, and pass the ball to the middle as much as you can without it getting stolen. And of course, we were one of those teams that taught our players that. Obviously, we have our set press breaks, but if you get stuck, this is what you do. And of course, what we're going to have is the standard screen, pass over, inbound, reverse. Now, that is just standard. Every single team teaches their players to do that. At least it seems like every single team teaches their players to do that. And from there, what we're going to have is player 3 attacking the middle. Basically, the whole idea behind this is to clog up the middle. We do not want anything going along the middle and only going along the sidelines because that's when you can trap your players. So we clog up the middle there. They pass out to player 1. At this time, player 2 is going to be in single coverage. And at this point, because there's a player over here, player 5 is going to be playing in single coverage in that player. If this ball was on that side, it would have been the same, but with player 5 on that side. Anyways, so we're going to have the ball with player 1. This is single coverage until the ball gets close to half. That is when we start having Player 4 sneak down, player 3 sneaking back. Player 4 is going to be the one that helps player 2 trap the player in that corner. This is all single coverage until that player reaches half, and that's when there's going to be a double team. Meanwhile, we're going to have these 3 players sneak back, and they're going to be guarding their own areas. Now this next one is also pretty interesting. Of course, there's going to be still that screen, pass, inbound, get the ball back to the middle. That's just a standard that it seems like every single team, again, uses. And now they're going to be attacking the middle. We have a 1-1-2-1. And from here, basically, we're trying to clog up the middle again. We're going to be having a trap along with player 4 and 3 in the corners. So what they're going to do is dribble up the middle, pass the ball to the side. What happens there is player 1 is going to follow that pass, and he's going to try and force player 1 towards this corner. Players 3 and 4 cannot go past half. Now what we're going to be having is if player 1 makes that pass back around, it's going to be player 2 defending player 3, forcing again towards the sidelines, and then player 1 is going to be taking player 2's spot. This may be difficult for really young teams, but if they're a bit older in that 10, 11-year-old age group, this might be really good. If they continue to reverse that ball around, we're going to have player 2 follow that pass, player 2 staying in the middle, and now they're going to be trying to force towards the sideline. Now, if player 5 was down here, we would have player 5 going down, player 4 covering the middle, but again, trying to force it towards the sideline. If it does get to the sideline, in this case, player 2 and 3 would be the ones trapping. Player 4 and 1 would be playing middle. I hope that these help your team win more games. If they do, hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.